Shalom from the holy city of Jerusalem today, the 18th day of the month of Mar Cheshvan of the year 5782, and I would dedicate today's discussion to the memory of two outstanding individuals in our generation, the late Rabbi Meir Kahana, may Hashem avenge his blood, and Rabbi Yisrael Ber Odessa, the Saba, the originator of the idea of Na'ach. Today's subject is the subject of the Torah leap year. It's called in Hebrew a pregnant year, Shana Me'uberet, in the same way that a woman who is expecting a child has the extra living being in her. He's a portion of her entire body, and she's very full of him at the climax of the pregnancy. And in Hebrew, this woman who is pregnant is called a me'uberet. The embryo in Hebrew is called the ibur, and to have ibur in one is the concept of the isha ham'uberet. And there's also the concept Kabbalistically of ibur, which is not directly connected to our subject today, but could be discussed at great length. And that is when a soul from the world of the souls becomes impregnated in a living person. This is not the same as incarnation, where a particular soul or a part of a soul is actually incarnated in a body that is born and goes through life and eventually dies. But the concept of ibur is that at some point or other in a person's life, it may be that for some repair or other, a soul of a departed individual, could be a relative, could be a magid, a teacher, is impregnated into the person and begins to actually act and speak through the person. But that's a side point. The Hebrew concept of the pregnant year, Shana Hamuberet, is adapted from the idea of the pregnant woman. And in the Torah calendar, we also have the concept of the Chodesh Muberet, where the Torah calendar consists of every regular year 12 lunar months, and the cycle of the circuit of the moon through the heavens in the course of the year until it reaches the same point in the zodiac where it started off is 354 days. And if you divide 354 into 12, you're going to get 29 and a half. Well, actually, the lunar month is very slightly longer than 29 and a half. But when we celebrate the new moon, we are celebrating a day on which it is appropriate to sanctify the new moon. And the Torah speaks about the day of Rosh Chodesh, and you cannot have a month that is 29 and a half days length, so that half of a particular day is going to be the month of Tishrei, and the other half is going to be the month of Cheshvan. And accordingly, in temple times, when the months were actually sanctified through the testimony of witnesses who had seen the sliver of the new moon on the western horizon just before the beginning of the waxing phase of the moon, when the moon wanes in the second half of the month, eventually it disappears and actually passes between Earth and the sun and becomes invisible. But as the moon begins to, continuing in its circuit, begins to depart from the sun, visible on the western horizon at the time of the new moon is the crescent of the new moon. And in temple times, people in the land of Israel who saw this would come rushing to Jerusalem, to the temple precincts, where they would testify to the Bet Din, to the rabbinical court, that they had seen the moon. Now, the sages of the rabbinical court were indeed supreme experts in astronomy. The ancient world had very many great astronomical achievements, and the whole panoply of the gods of Babylon and Egypt and other countries were all bound up with the months of the year and with the phases of the sky, the planets, and so on and so forth. And the Torah sages, who were indeed masters of calculations of the position of the moon in the sky, would examine very carefully the witnesses who came to check that they were not actually spreading falsehoods, because there was a certain interest in Second Temple times of renegades, of heretics, to deceive the Bet Din and to say they'd seen the moon when they had not. And so therefore the rabbis of the Bet Din had to check them very carefully. And the secret of knowing where the moon is going to be situated in the sky at the time of the new moon is known in Hebrew as the Sod Ha'ibur, the secret of the pregnancy. The Sod Ha'ibur is a general expression for a whole realm of astronomical and astrological, holy astrological knowledge with which the sages of the Torah set down the rules for the sanctification of the month and for the number of months that will be in a year. I mentioned that the lunar year is 354 days long approximately, and the solar year we know is approximately 365.25 days. There are some disputes among the sages about the exact length of the solar year, but we go with the figure 365, and obviously there's a discrepancy between the 354 days of the lunar year and the 365 days of the solar year. So the Torah instructs us to make our count of years beginning in the month of Nisan in the spring in the northern hemisphere in the land of Israel, the month of redemption, and we count Nisan the first month and go through 12 months. And when we get to the end of 12 lunar months, we then have a new year, a new Nisan, and so we continue the count. If we continue doing this, the lunar year is going to get very, very way out of sync with the solar year. And this is a problem because the Torah commands us to celebrate the festival of Pesach in a season that is called the Aviv. The Aviv, you know the word Tel Aviv, the rock of the spring, the mountain of the spring. Aviv is that beautiful time of the year when the trees have begun to bud and the crops are growing, and particularly in the land of Israel, the barley crop is ripening, and we need the barley crop to be fully ripe by the second day of the festival of Pesach, because the Torah commands us to bring the omer measure of the barley to the temple as an offering on the second day of Pesach. So Pesach must fall in the Aviv season. And if we were simply to let the solar years run their course and the lunar years run their course 12 months, 12 months, 12 months, we very soon be in a situation where the lunar year is way out of sync with the solar year. And by the time Nisan comes, we'll be way after Aviv, way after the spring. And therefore, the Torah sages gave us the method of the Shanat Ha'ibur, the leap year, the pregnant year, called the pregnant year because instead of having 12 lunar months, it has 13 lunar months. That is to say, instead of simply counting 12 months from Nisan, when we get to the 12th month, the month of Adar, we then, in the Torah leap year, have a second month of Adar, Adar Sheni, and indeed the characteristic festivals of Adar are celebrated in the second Adar. And this is the leap year, this is the embryo with which this particular year is impregnated. And we have to have the system of leap years, and it's set up so that in our time, we have 7 leap years every 19 years. The Torah leap year comes at intervals of every 2 to 3 years. And the point is that we must have 7 leap years every 19 solar years, and this is what keeps the lunar year and the solar year in almost perfect sync. The differential is absolutely tiny. If you want to look at all of these ideas and principles, they're all set out with crystal clarity in the writings of Rabbi Moshe ben Maimonides, the Rambam, in his Mishnah Torah in the section called Kiddush HaChodesh. The laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, the sanctification of the month, are the introduction to all of the associated laws with respect to calculating and setting up the months of the year, the leap years, and various other factors involved in the Torah calendar. The Rambam himself was, without a question, privy to the Sod HaIbur in the manifest sense of being an absolute master of astronomy. If you look at the chapters of that section of Kiddush HaChodesh, Maimonides sets forth all of the principles of the Torah calendar, all of the principles of the sanctification of the moon in temple times, and the setting of the fixed calendar ever since after temple times until our time, until the temple will be rebuilt speedily in our time. All of these principles are in Rambam's laws there, together with exact details of how you calculate where the moon will appear in the sky according to the astronomical degrees of the heavens, exactly where the moon will appear on any particular date. It is quite extraordinary that Maimonides has provided us with these methods of calculating the appearance of the moon and various other phenomena which depend upon this. And clearly he was an absolute master of this subject. In our generation, an outstanding sage that was also clearly a master of this entire subject, and I have no hesitation in saying that he was a master of the Sod HaIbur, both in the aspect of Nigla, the revealed sense of the astronomy involved, and in terms of the Nigla, the Kabbalistic meaning of this. And this was the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. If our image of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is one of the famous figure waving and smiling at us so very beautifully and inspiringly, or addressing thousands and thousands of Hasidim in a Farbrengen, or distributing dollars, for the first 50 years of the Rebbe's life before he became a Rebbe, he was very much of an introvert and practically spent all his time in devotion and Torah. As a child, it is said that he had in his room, on the walls of his room, diagrams of all of the constellations of the heavens. As a young man, he would throw a remark to somebody, well, there's going to be eclipse on such and such a date. And the person went off and waited the eclipse and came back complaining, well, I didn't see the eclipse. He said, well, I'm sorry, you were in the wrong place. Had you been in such and such a coordinates, you'd have seen it. And clearly, as a young man, he was already a master of astronomy. And by the time he became a Rebbe, I have no doubt that he was an absolute master of the Sod HaIbur, the true secret of the pregnancy, which relates to the lunar months and how we synchronize them with the solar months. So this year 5782 is indeed a leap year according to our calendar. And not only that, but also this year in the Holy Land of Israel, since Rosh Hashanah, since the 6th of September, has been the Shanat Hashmita, the holy sabbatical year. And indeed, many people up and down the land are taking this very seriously. There are farmers who are dressed all the year in their Shabbat clothes because they are the ones who are actually fulfilling the Sabbath of the land. I saw most beautiful footage when on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, when the farmers came out of the fields playing their musical instruments, rejoicing at the coming Shemitah. And it's a year when we truly entrust everything to the Lord God. And by God, we need it. We need it. We have enemies across the world. We have enemies of states and of terrorist groups. We have enemies of cultural groups, social groups across the world. And all of this is simply a sign of our burgeoning Geulah, our burgeoning I don't know where that's coming from. Sorry about that. Let's just get this out of the way. There you go. Sorry about that. This year is the year of Geulah. Let us hope and pray that it will be. We need to make our internal Geulah, each one of us, because that is the key to Geulah. It is what happens in the heart of each and every one of us. I'm very fond of quoting a favorite passage from the Midrash of Elijah the prophet, the Tana Devei Eliyahu, when it says, do you know what it was that made God take the children of Israel out of Egypt? Because something happened in the heart of each and every one that only God knew. And that was that each and every one took an internal decision. I care for my fellow. I really care. I really care for all of us. And because each one took that decision in their heart, God brought about Geulat Mitzrayim, the redemption from Egypt. So what is the secret of the Shana Amuberet, the pregnant year? Well, here we are doing something quite amazing, and I'm going to be basing my discussion now on teachings that are given in the writings of the disciple of Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, that is Rabbi Rabbi Nosson of Breslev, in his remarkable 8-volume Hebrew work, Likutei Halachot, discussing all of the day-to-day laws of Judaism in the widest context of Kabbalah, Hasidism, with the most remarkable drashot. And he has, in a very extensive discourse in his discussion of the laws of Milah, of circumcision, a section in the course of this discussion that stands by itself, which discusses the whole secret of the Ibur. And I would like to share this with you. This secret is given only to the greatest of the tzaddikim of the generation. As it's written in Deuteronomy, you must guard and perform this Torah, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the nations. That is to say, since the nations are familiar with astronomy, when they see that the sages of Israel have all the secrets of astronomy and the synchronization of the solar year and the lunar year, this will attest to the great wisdom that God has given to Israel. And the concept of Sota Ibur is, as defined by Reb Nosson here, to determine when is going to be Rosh Chodesh, the new moon. This we have to know because all of our festivals are given to us in the Torah as being on one particular or other day of the month. The Pesach is on the 15th of Nisan, Sukkot is on the 15th of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah is on the 1st of Tishrei, Yom Kippur is on the 10th of Tishrei. If we don't know when the month begins, we don't know how to count the days to the festival, so this we have to know. And the entire sanctification of time is thus put into the hands of Israel. Time is a line that flows and flows, but we ourselves, our sages, have the power to draw down the holiness of the Torah and say, this is the day of Pesach. This is the day of Sukkot, and all of the treasures of that day will be revealed on this day, earmarked by the sages according to their calculations according to the phases of the moon. So obviously this is a very, very great secret, particularly understanding the mystical meaning of this secret. And Rebbe Nosson explains to us that the essential concepts of the sun and of the moon are obviously related to day and night. The creation account in Genesis tells us that the moon was created to count time, and the sun obviously gives us our day, and its absence gives us our night, etc. And this is the great light and the small light. The sun is the shining, radiant light, and the moon has no light of her own. She only has what she gives, receiving, reflected from the sun. Well, now, there are two concepts here. There's the concept of time, and there's the concept of above time. We live in time. We're all hounded by time. It's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, rush. But there is a realm that is beyond time, and that is a realm of God. God's very name attests to this, the essential name of God, Yud Kei Vov Kei Havaya, contains the Hebrew words Hoyo, Hoyveh, Yahir. He was, he is, he will be, simultaneously. At all times, God is simultaneously, completely cognizant of everything ever. This is above time. But we are sent down into this world constrained by time. Reb Nachman illustrates this in a very beautiful mashal, a parable. A person may be sleeping, and in his dream, he seems to be going through endless time, 70 years. But he wakes up and only 15 minutes have elapsed. So Rabbi Nachman explains that when a person is asleep, their higher sechel leaves them, and they're left with what is known as the koach hamadame, the imaginative faculty, which is the source of our dreams and our imagination and our most of our consciousness. And this is what is left within us, and therefore it can seem, according to this limited consciousness, that 15 minutes seems like 70 years. Because we are time-bound, we're so obsessed with time, we don't realize actually the time is just passing so fast. Well, in God's eyes, who is fully awake, this 15 minutes that you thought was 70 years is absolutely nothing. A life of 70 years, of 120 years, of how many, it's nothing. A century, a millennium, it's all nothing. It's all because it's beyond time. Not that he is detached from time. God is intimately involved in every moment and every detail, but he himself is beyond this. And the whole secret of our faith is when we attach the world of time and space in which we are situated, when we attach this world to the world that is beyond time, the world of God. And this is what we are doing with all of our celebrations of time. We count 7 days and we elevate the seventh day to God. And in this way we rise above time, beyond time. On the seventh day, time stops still. Well, almost. But you can have a most wonderful transcendent feeling on the seventh day. Because we are attaching ourselves to beyond time. The same is with all of our services, morning, afternoon, and evening. We go up in the morning. We immediately deal with our bodily functions, and the very first thing we do is we say the morning blessings, attaching each of our individual functions to the creator of those functions, who is above all. And so as we get into our prayers, the Psalms and the blessings, the Shema and the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah prayer, we're attaching each and every detail of this world to God's world. And this is, to be able to do this successfully, is a huge secret, to know what are the times of favor, What are the times that are propitious for particular attachment to God? Because God has created a world where not everything is equal. Not all times are equal. Not all places are equal. And we need to find the appropriate times which are revealed to us in the Torah. The 1st of Nisan, the 15th of Nisan, count 50 days to Shavuot, the 1st of Tishrei, the 10th of Tishrei, 15th. These are times of elevation when we, from this transient, rushing world, can attach ourselves to eternity. But you see, all the time that we're in this world, it's the physicality, the materialism, the endless things we've got to do. We have to attend to so many things day by day. Our bodies, our homes, our beds, our tables, our work, etc., etc. All of this is what conceals the timeless world beyond from us. And that's why we need to take moments through the day to attach ourselves back to the higher timeless eternity. So now, we as ordinary people who are bang incarnated in this world with all the things we have to do every single day, we absolutely need the guidance of sages who have already succeeded in attaching themselves to timeless eternity, to help us to begin to connect back our diffuse and disparate lives to eternity. And all of this is the concept of da'at, the concept of understanding. The concept of understanding is key to all of our being as Israelites. Da'at, understanding, is the goal. We look to the day when the world will be filled with the knowledge of God like the waters cover the seas. But you cannot get to da'at, to this supreme knowledge, except through the gateway. The gateway is emunah. The gateway is malchut, accepting there is a ruler, there is a controller, there's one who controls, rules, king over all, and it's not enough just to say, well, yes, I know that's true, I believe it in my heart. You have to actually, in order to manifest and realize your godly potential, to connect every detail of your life to this being that is beyond. And then the more you do this, is the whole concept of yichudim, when you unite yourself with the Almighty, and this is what opens up the channels of blessings, when we are able to get the right times and the right actions, the right word, the right mitzvah on this day or that day. This is how we light up this world with da'at. So we need to get to this concept of beyond time. And this is what the whole Sod HaIbur is all about. Because time is malchut. Time is the kingdom. Time is God's gift to us. Every day, every hour, every minute is a gift of God. And we need to absolutely treasure every moment that we can and use our time to the absolute. Now, if I call time malchut, I have a reason why I want to do this, because we know that the aspect of malchut, God's kingdom, has 12 regions, 12 gevulot. These 12 gevulot, in terms of space, are the 12 tribes of Israel. In terms of time, they are the 12 months of the year, and they are the 12 hours of the day and 12 hours of the night. And all of these are expansions of the holy name of Hashem. All of these are derived, the hours of the day and the hours of the night. There are all of the different, there are 12 possible permutations of the name Havaya. Yud K Vov K. There should be 24, since there are 24, since there are 4 letters, and 4 letters can be permutated in 24 different ways. But since 2 of the letters are identical, the letters Hey, we actually see only 12 permutations, but really there are 24, and for that reason there are 24 hours to the day, 12 hours to the day, and 12 hours to the night. And these are all receiving their emanation from the holy name of God, which is powering creation. Yud K Vov K. The Hebrew root is Hoveh, being. And the Yud at the beginning of the divine name, Yud K Vov K, means he makes it be. He makes it, pumping time, pumping being into the world. So our regular year is a manifestation of God's Malchut in all of the different characteristics of the months of the year. But in order to accomplish the synchronization, we need to elevate the 12 months of the regular year to the concept of 13. And this is an enormous tikkun, because when we speak about the 12 gvulot, the 12 regions of Malchut, the 12 tribes, the 12 hours, the 12 months, we're talking about our world. We're talking about the way God manifests in the world of time and space. But way beyond our world, up in the highest realms of the Kabbalistic mysteries, we have the concept of Adam Kadmon, the primordial Adam, which is the archetype of everything that manifests later in creation on every level. Not a person, not a God, but a concept which is the source of all of the later creations. Well, now as we come down from the levels of Adam Kadmon, down the tree of the Kabbalah, we go through the phases of the Tzimtzum, the contraction of the light. We go through the phases of the Ribui Or, the too much light, the breaking of the vessels, and all of that is way back in the spiritual history of the universe, until we get to where the phase that is of concern for us, and that is the tikkun, the repair. God created a world that is imperfect in order that we should gain merit through our efforts to perfect the world. And the perfect world derives from a level that is known as Atika Kadisha, the outstanding Holy One. And like all of the levels of the Kabbalah, this level is interpreted according to the form of a person, a man. And for that reason, the Partzuf, the form of this world, has a head, has arms, and a torso, and legs, and creativity, because God is giving with his kindness, and disciplining and chastising with his power, and revealing all his other midot. So the beard, the zakan, is called the glory of the face of the male. Really, the Torah says, "V'hadarta pnei zaken," you should give hadar, honor, to the one that is a zakan, an elder who has a beard. The zakan, which is coming forth from the face and from the head, consists of se'arot, the hairs. And in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for a hair, se'ar, which is spelled sin ayin resh. If you change the sin into a shin, it is a sha'ar, a gate. We can't comprehend infinity. We can only have a connection with God when there is tzimtzum, when the divine light is condensed and contracted to a level where we can relate to it. And that is why out of each and every follicle of the head, there are coming hairs. These are actually considered to Kabbalah to be effusing the wisdom of the brain in this particular form. And since the level we are talking about is pure spirituality, The Zakan of Atika Kadisha, or sometimes called Arich Anpin, depending on terminology, these very exalted levels of divine kindness, the Zakan is said to have 13 tikkunim. That is to say, there are 13 aspects of the divine Zakan, the divine, as it were, beard, all of which are discussed at length in a section of the Holy Zohar in the book of Bamidbar, the portion of Nassau, in a section called the Idra Rabbah, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai revealed all the secrets of these 13 attributes. These are the 13 attributes of mercy. And what we are doing in Shana Mu'uberet, in the leap year, is we are connecting time and space as we know it, the normal course of years, with that which is beyond time, with a year of 13 months, which is the divine year, receiving its influence from the beard of Arich Anpin, Atika Kadisha, from the 13 attributes of mercy. And that is why, in a nutshell, this leap year is considered to have a particular sanctity and a particular segula, a particular potency. And for that reason, it's also considered to be a time of din, of judgment. And that's because nothing that is precious comes without discipline, comes without rules, comes without the correct way to receive it. So that's the whole point of the Sod HaIbur, this world of trials, this world of pains, or pandemics and inflation and shortages and everything else that we're all so busy with, unfortunately, right now. We need to lift ourselves up and free ourselves of all this nonsense that we're being primed by the media, by YouTube, by the social media. They're cramming our heads with garbage, and we need to free ourselves to cast off all this nonsense and to focus on the truth, the radiance of God's kindness. When we do a kind act, when we help, when we smile, when we give a helping hand, we are bringing these 13 attributes of mercy into the world. And so it is with our every mitzvah, with our every holy action, we are actually connecting the hard world of time and space with the divine reality, which is all kindness and compassion. And when we look way, way beyond to that long, distant goal of God's perfection, if we will focus on that and know that that is what we are going to, we will bear and put up with all we have to go through, and we will know that it's all from God Almighty to cleanse us, to purify us, to help us to make repairs. And let us this year, with God's help, receive Melech Moshiach, our Holy King Moshiach, who will inspire our hearts to go back to the Torah with joy, with love, and we will consume the whole world with love, God willing. Shalom from the holy city of Yerushalayim.